I want to get to the if it's okay with you, the kind of the dark, scary stuff that um I mean, I had a few run-ins with, scary people as a result of my work, but I think partly because you're a young woman, you
Mhm.
become I mean, everything all your work in one way or another, not all of it, but so much of it, and so much of the internet's problems go back to angry white sexless men, there's sort of
Mhm.
the even the AI deepfake thing is mostly a it's sort of an incel extension. So,
Mhm.
you covered the Kiwi Farms harassment network, um, which maybe you can explain, and you've been it made you a target yourself. So I guess I'm interested to know what does it cost, practically, personally, and even kind of, spiritually to do this kind of work as an independent journalist without some, like, NBC thing to protect you if they ever did?
Yeah, I think I started encountering sort of harassment and retaliation for my work very early on, especially because when I cover influencers, especially when I cover sort of like negative allegations or controversies involving these online figures, they have online fan bases who are going to attack any sort of opponent or perceived opponent. So that was one of the first things that I encountered was fans of targets of my reporting or just subjects of my reporting who were very irate, who would come after me and you would send me threats, would harass me, would do all of these things. And in the beginning, I was sort of like, this is meaningless. This means nothing to me. Like, whatever, I don't care. I'm not going to listen to that. As time goes on, I think you can kind of see how these consequences can be more impactful. And for example, like I've had so many people try to vandalize my Wikipedia page and they will insert things that say like she's biased. They will insert things like she lied about so and so. Wikipedia is very good at actually preventing a lot of this type of harassment from occurring on its platform, but it's not perfect. And elsewhere around the web, you see how this can be more effective. Google SEO, for example, will surface things people have written about you. There was a petition to get me fired, and that was at one point pretty high up in my Google search results. And it's like, stuff like that, you don't even necessarily know how impactful it is because if someone is thinking about hiring me for a job, or if someone is just looking up information about me and they come across this stuff, you don't even necessarily know it's happened and it could change how people view you. So I think reputational damage is one of the biggest consequences of reporting today. And of course, it especially impacts women. And I think women of color, most of all, have to deal with like these reputational consequences. The actual harassment and death threats for me never escalated to a point where I felt truly unsafe. A lot of my friends in the field have certainly experienced that. I think with going independent, another big threat is sort of the legal liability that you have to carry as a journalist. And so at NBC or at Business Insider, they have in house lawyers who work for the company who can not only do pre publication review, but also respond to all the threats you're going to receive. As an independent journalist, I have insurance policies for like errors and omission, but it's a major fear and it's a major threat. And the New York Times business editor David Ehrlich just wrote a book about this last year called
Mhm.
"Murder the Truth," about these sort of coordinated campaigns against independent journalists. So those are major concerns. I think those are like the biggest things that plague me on a day to day. It requires a certain persistence and a certain sort of ability to withstand backlash in order to do this. And I don't judge people for not being able to handle it. It's not something that's easy to do.
No, it certainly is, and it feels in some ways just as sort of Gamergate was practice for January 6th. It
Yes.
feels like, harassing a woman writing about internet incels feels like practice for 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 shutting down a journalist exposing the truth about an authoritarian government.
Exactly, exactly, and I find that, like, we're seeing these smear campaigns grow more and more sophisticated. And one of the things that I've covered a lot over the past few years is how these smear campaigns function. And we don't even know all the answers yet. We don't even know for sure, like, who is a bot, who isn't a bot. What does a bot even mean in this context? Like, are people paying for this stuff? How are they orchestrating it? But what we do know is that there are people out there who are paid very well to orchestrate these types of campaigns online. Their tactics and their success rates are kind of yet to be determined, but the job definitely exists. Like, the fixers are out there.
Yeah, it's weird in some ways. Maybe this is mental illness on my own part, but but it feels safer to imagine, "Oh, this isn't really a person who wants to kill me. This is some people in Russia or somewhere or at Facebook orchestrating AIs to say this thing." I mean, I remember for me back in way back, when I had my daughter, like in 2004, which is kind of before this stuff was happening. My daughter was born. My wife put a picture up of the baby picture, and the first comment there, some kind of neo-Nazi guy said, "Oh, she looks like a little kike already." And I was just
Oh,
like, "Whoa," and that bothered me more to think because it was probably a human at
yeah.
that point who said that. So and then I get kinda scared, or the sort of the early 4chan era when they would dox you. It's like, "We found his house. We found his car. Here's a picture of his dog." You know? It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, fuck. They're
Yeah.
coming." And
Yeah.
now maybe it's less real,
Mhm.
less harmful, less but there's real violence too happening, right? I mean, I guess
Yes.
that's something you've covered. How does in the early internet days, in the muds and stuff, before who was it wrote that piece, Richard Gere wrote his piece, The Rape in Cyberspace in 1994 or whatever. We thought the internet would be a safe place for people to go nuts, that they could
Mhm.
sort of live out their weird fantasy things. But it turns out that the internet is so connected to the real world that violence in the cloud
Yep.
hits the ground.
Yes. Yes.
How do you make that argument that this is real?
This idea that what happens online isn't real. And even in our casual language, we often say, like, oh, what happens online versus what happens in the real world. Like, people use this framing all the time. I have to catch myself from not using this framing because I do think that we've moved into a state of being in a state in our society where increasingly what happens online is the real world for a lot of people,
Mm,
especially like I started using smartphones in high school. So I didn't grow I was still a child by the time I began integrating smartphones and social media into my daily life, but there was a period of my childhood that I can remember before all of that. For kids growing up today, this is all they've ever known. And so of course digital worlds are very real to them. They don't even have a point of comparison from before digital worlds impacted our reality. But especially when you look at, like, people get their news on social media, people get feedback on social media, even our beauty standards have evolved to reflect what is popular online versus what is popular offline. So I think that at this point, there's really not as much of a gap. And that can be really dangerous because things online can obviously be inauthentic and distorted. But now those distortions reflect on and cause real consequences in our physical offline settings.
right. It's also, if it is your social life, if it is, you know, it's an extension of our neurology
Yeah.
at this point.
And people have entire relationships online. People have entire relationships. They fall in love with people and they never even see them in real life. So, in that sense, you can see how online functions can be very, very real world functions.
Right. But it also, there's actual physical violence that happens too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so many acts of terror stem from these online situations. At this point, I think 4chan has been linked to several far right terrorist attacks, manifestos, even the shooting of Charlie Kirk. On the bullets were inscribed these very online phrases. And the killer, told all of his friends on Discord what he had done after it happened. So there is this massive escalation, particularly, I think, around violence stemming from some of these online radical echo chambers.
Where do you point us, whether it's, government or people or builders, toward sort of mitigating the harm? I've always tried to do, like, media literacy, but media literacy seems to have failed, you know?
Yeah.
They're all the ones who say, "Do the research," they just deconstruct everything and become conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. My early years spent online as a teenager led me down a very different path than some of these, for example, young men who are spending time on places like 4chan, like Kiwi Farms. Those websites are extreme, they are echo chambers, and they are conduits for harassment. You also have alternatives. I grew up and I spent a lot of time in my teenage years on Tumblr. And on Tumblr, there was a lot of social justice activism happening.
Right.
So that was how I learned about feminism. And that was how I learned about social justice and progress and LGBTQ identity and all of these really, really great things. And I think to me, I almost view them as like two sides of the same coin, where it's like you had a big population of young men becoming radicalized in a conservative direction in some parts of the internet. And then you had a big group of young women becoming more radicalized in a liberal, progressive direction on other sides of the internet. So there is a way to harness these tools for social progress. But I think the incentive structure is completely broken because on all the major social platforms today, you are disincentivized from posting about things that lend themselves toward political or human or progressive progress. You are more incentivized to make people angry, to make people confused. Like all of those very antisocial behaviors are what the platforms have incentivized in order to, of course, keep people online longer, keep them engaged, keep them consuming advertisements.